The desert sun was beginning to hide behind the Rocky Mountains when the thunderous crash tore through the valley's silence like thunder born from the earth itself. Carmen Delgado lifted her eyes from the dusty trail, her hand instinctively reaching for her pistol grip. But it wasn't the sound of gunfire she knew so well. It was something much worse. In the distance, a column of black smoke rose to the heavens like a desperate prayer, and the acrid smell of burnt iron and charred wood reached her, carried by the hot wind. The passenger train had derailed at the dangerous curve of Wind Canyon, transforming into a twisted metal serpent, spitting fire and despair. Carmen spurred her horse, galloping toward the tragedy. In her 10 years as a detective, she had seen men die in terrible ways, by bullets, by knives, by the desert's relentless heat. But there was something in the scene before her that chilled her experienced blood. The cars were scattered like broken toys from a giant child, some still upright, others completely destroyed by voracious flames. Screams echoed through the air, some of pain, others of panic, many already silenced forever. Carmen dismounted while still in motion, her boots touching the hot earth as she quickly assessed the situation. Survivors staggered among the wreckage, some wounded, others in shock, all marked by the brutality of the accident. That's when the sound hit her like a dagger to the heart. A cry, sharp, desperate, coming from inside the central car that blazed with orange flames. The cry of a child. "My God," Carmen murmured, quickly calculating her chances. The car was almost completely engulfed by fire, flames licking the broken windows like hungry tongues. In a few minutes, the entire structure would collapse. But the crying continued, a sound that pierced her soul in a way no bullet ever could. Carmen didn't hesitate. She removed the scarf from her neck, soaked it with water from her canteen, and covered her face. The heat beat against her skin like invisible hammers as she approached the car's side entrance. Flames danced around her, creating demonic shadows on the twisted walls. "Where are you, pequeño?" She shouted through the thick smoke, her eyes burning and tearing. "Keep crying. I'll find you." The sound guided her through the hell of iron and fire. At the back of the car, partially protected by a pile of fallen luggage, was a dark-haired boy, no more than 8 years old, with tears leaving clean tracks on his soot-covered face. Carmen had no time for questions. She took the boy in her arms and ran toward the exit, while burning beams collapsed around them like deadly falling stars. The heat was unbearable. The air was becoming thin, but she kept running, protecting the child with her own body. They emerged from hell seconds before the car collapsed completely in a shower of golden sparks against the darkening sky. Carmen fell to her knees in the sand. The boy still clutched to her chest, both coughing and gasping. She looked down at those large dark eyes that stared at her with a mixture of terror and gratitude. In that moment, something changed inside her, something she couldn't name, but knew would change her life forever. What Carmen Delgado didn't know, as she cradled that orphaned boy against her heart, was that she had just saved her own destiny from the flames, and that this heroic act would unleash a chain of events that would test everything she believed about justice, love, and sacrifice. Sometimes, saving a life can condemn a soul. If you're feeling the same tension I felt witnessing this heroic rescue, leave your like and tell me in the comments. Would you have risked everything to save an unknown child? The next part promises to reveal more about this boy's mysterious past. The 3 days that followed the rescue passed like a fragmented dream in Carmen's small wooden house, situated on the outskirts of Esperanza Perdida. The boy, who finally revealed his name, Diego, remained silent most of the time, his large, dark eyes following every movement of the detective as if she were the only real thing in a world that had crumbled. Carmen had never cared for a child. Her life had always been dedicated to the hunt, to the implacable justice that the West demanded. But something in Diego's fragility awakened maternal instincts she didn't know she possessed. Her hands, accustomed to wielding weapons, now prepared hot broths and applied ointments to the small burns that marked the boy's thin arms. "Are you hungry, little one?" Carmen asked, placing a plate of steaming stew on the rustic table. Diego nodded timidly, his small hands trembling slightly as he held the spoon. Every movement seemed painful, not just from physical wounds, but from something deeper that Carmen recognized well: the pain of loss. During the long nights, when nightmares made Diego scream through tears, Carmen rocked him in her arms, whispering songs her own mother had sung decades ago. It was strange how this child had filled a void in her life she hadn't even realized existed. The house, once silent and cold, now echoed with small footsteps and occasional shy laughter. "My mother, she was on the train," Diego murmured one morning, watching Carmen prepare coffee. These were the first words about his family he had spoken since the accident. "She said we were going to a better place where Papa couldn't find us." Carmen felt a tightness in her chest. Another family destroyed by the violence that plagued these lands. How many widows and orphans had she encountered in her career? But this one was different. This one was under her protection now. "Was your father mean to you?" she asked delicately, kneeling at the boy's height. Diego shook his head quickly, his eyes filling with tears. "No. Papa was good to me, but Mama cried a lot when he wasn't home. She said he did bad things to other people, but that he loved me very much." Diego's voice broke. "Now they're gone forever." Carmen pulled the boy into her arms, feeling her heart break. She knew this story well. Men who loved their families but had chosen dark paths. The West was full of them, and their families always paid the highest price. "You're not alone, Diego," she whispered, stroking the boy's dark hair. "As long as I'm here, you'll have a family." In the following days, Carmen began teaching Diego about the world beyond tragedy. She showed him how to care for horses, how to identify different animal tracks in the sand, how the desert sunset painted the sky with colors that existed nowhere else. She spoke about courage, about making difficult choices, about how justice sometimes required painful sacrifices. "Why do you hunt bad men?" Diego asked one afternoon, watching Carmen clean her weapons with the precision of someone who had done it thousands of times. "Because someone needs to protect the innocent," she replied without looking up. "Because every captured bandit means families that can sleep in peace." Diego nodded solemnly, as if understanding the weight of those words. Carmen smiled, proud of the boy's precocious maturity. She was raising a little man of honor, someone who would make a difference in the world. What she didn't know was that with each lesson about justice and courage, she was unconsciously preparing her greatest enemy's son to face a truth that would destroy them both. Fate had a cruel sense of irony, and Carmen Delgado was about to discover how deeply her convictions would be tested. Sometimes love is born in the most unlikely places and grows strongest exactly where it should be impossible. 2 weeks had passed since Diego became part of Carmen's life, and the detective was beginning to discover how difficult it was to balance her dangerous profession with the responsibility of caring for a child. Every morning, before sunrise, she studied the wanted posters spread over her rustic table, but her thoughts invariably turned to the boy sleeping in the next room. "Good morning, little Carmen," Diego said with a shy smile, appearing in the kitchen with disheveled hair. He had started calling her that the previous week, and the affectionate nickname made Carmen's heart melt every time. "Good morning, my brave little one," she replied, quickly hiding documents about Esteban the Viper Morales. She didn't want the child to see the brutal descriptions of that man's crimes, the bloody robberies, the destroyed families, the trail of terror he left wherever he went. Esteban Morales was her primary target for more than a year. The most wanted bandit in the entire territory, a ghost who appeared to sow destruction and then disappeared like smoke in the desert wind. Carmen had sworn to capture him after he attacked a settler caravan near Santa Fe, leaving 8 dead, including 2 small children. But now, with Diego under her responsibility, every mission became a dilemma. How could she risk her life knowing there was a child depending on her? How could she leave him alone, vulnerable, while chasing ghosts through the desert? "What is that?" Diego asked, pointing to a dark mark on the edge of one of the papers Carmen hadn't managed to hide completely. "Those are work maps, little one. Nothing important," she lied, quickly folding the document. "How about we have breakfast and then I teach you how to make lassos?" Diego's eyes sparkled with enthusiasm, and Carmen felt a pang of guilt for lying. But how could she explain to a child that she spent her days planning how to capture or kill dangerous men? How could she tell him that his new adoptive mother was known throughout the territory for her deadly precision with a revolver? During the following days, Carmen tried to keep her investigation about Morales secret, working only when Diego slept or played away from home. Evidence accumulated. Witnesses reported sightings of the bandit in nearby towns, always with a small group of loyal men and always leaving destruction in his wake. "You know it's too dangerous to pursue this man alone," Sheriff Martinez warned during a visit. His eyes shifted to Diego, who was playing in the yard with a wooden horse Carmen had bought in town. "Especially now that you have responsibilities." Carmen followed his gaze, observing the child who had become the center of her world. "That's exactly why I need to capture him, Martinez. How many other children like Diego will lose their families if I don't do my job? And if you die in this hunt, what will happen to the boy?" It was a question that tormented Carmen every night, but her answer was always the same. "Then at least he'll know I died trying to make the world a safer place for him." In the weeks that followed, Carmen began teaching Diego about more than just practical skills. She spoke about moral choices, about the difference between right and wrong, about how a real man protects the innocent even when it costs dearly. "One day, when you grow up," she said one afternoon, while teaching Diego to shoot at empty cans with a small pistol, "you'll have to choose what kind of man you want to be. You can choose to protect the weak or take advantage of them. You can choose honor or cowardice." Diego nodded seriously, his aim concentrating on the can. The accurate shot knocked down the target, and Carmen smiled proudly. "Excellent. You have steady hands and a pure heart. That's a rare combination in the West." What Carmen didn't know was that with each lesson about honor and justice, she was molding the conscience of the very son of the man she hunted relentlessly. Esteban La Vibora Morales had left a legacy of blood and terror, but he had also left a child who now learned values opposite to what his true father represented. Fate wove its web with invisible threads, and Carmen Delgado was unknowingly creating the instrument of her own future tragedy. Sometimes the purest love can be born from the cruelest ignorance. The first sign that something was terribly wrong came on a hot July morning when Carmen returned from an investigation in a neighboring town with a folder of documents recovered from the train wreckage. For weeks, she had avoided examining the victim's belongings. It was a painful task she preferred to leave to local authorities, but the lack of information about Diego's family had finally forced her to face that dark evidence. "Diego is playing by the stream," she murmured to herself, spreading the charred papers over the kitchen table. Most were unrecognizable, destroyed by fire and water, but some fragments were still legible. Train tickets, personal letters, partially burned photographs, the last vestiges of lives interrupted by tragedy. That's when she saw it. A half-destroyed photograph, with charred edges, but the center still visible. Carmen felt the blood freeze in her veins when she recognized the boy in the image. Diego, a few years younger, smiling radiantly in the arms of a man with a dark mustache and penetrating gaze. Her hands trembled as she turned the photo over. On the back, written in a woman's delicate handwriting, it read, "Esteban y Diego, Navidad 1878. "No, it can't be," Carmen whispered, letting the photograph fall onto the table as if it burned her hands. But even while her mind rejected the terrible possibility, her detective heart was already connecting the dots she had refused to see. The boy's name was Diego Morales, the father he had mentioned with so much love, the man his mother was trying to avoid by fleeing on the train. Carmen ran to the chest where she kept her wanted files, her hands frantically searching for the poster she knew by heart. There he was, Esteban La Vibora Morales, wanted for murder, robbery, and terrorism. The face in the family photograph matched exactly the drawing on the poster. Dios mío. The truth hit her like a fist to the stomach. For weeks, she had cared for, loved, and taught moral values to the son of the territory's most wanted man. The child she had saved from the flames, whom she affectionately called Pequeño, was the son of her greatest enemy. Carmen let herself fall into a chair, her head spinning with the implications. All of Diego's stories about the father who loved him but did bad things. The mother's flight on the train, the very location of the accident, which she now realized was on the route Morales would use to take his family away from his crimes. "Little Carmen, look what I caught." Diego's cheerful voice echoed from the yard, and Carmen quickly hid the documents. She couldn't let him see that. Not yet. Maybe never. "What did you catch, my love?" she asked, forcing a smile when the boy ran in, wet and smiling, holding a small fish. "A golden fish. Can we cook it for lunch?" Diego approached, and Carmen felt her heart breaking as she saw the innocence in his eyes. How could she look at that pure child, knowing he carried the blood of a killer? "Of course, little one. Let's clean it together," she replied, her voice sounding strange to her own ears. That night, after Diego fell asleep, Carmen stayed awake until very late, studying every document, every piece of evidence. The story became clearer and more painful with each discovery. Esteban Morales had really tried to leave his life of crime. The latest information suggested he was planning to settle in Mexico with his family, away from his dark past. But fate had other plans. The accident that killed his wife and that he believed had also killed his son probably pushed him back into violence. A man who had lost everything had nothing left to lose. Carmen looked at the door to the room where Diego slept, her heart divided between the maternal love she had developed and the oath of justice that had guided her entire life. How could she continue hunting the father knowing this would make Diego an orphan forever? But how could she ignore all of Morales's crimes, all the families he had destroyed? The territory's most feared detective had discovered that love can be the cruelest weapon that fate wields. Sometimes the truth doesn't liberate, it condemns. The dilemma forming in her mind was impossible. Saving justice would mean destroying her heart, but saving her heart would mean betraying everything she believed in. Carmen discovered a truth that could destroy everything she built with Diego. If you're feeling the same tightness in your heart as I am, leave your like and tell me. What would you do in Carmen's place? The next part will reveal how this discovery will change everything. The 3 days that followed the discovery were the most torturous in Carmen's life. She watched Diego play, laugh, and call her Carmencita with the same affection as always, while fighting against the storm that devastated her heart. How could she continue pretending nothing had changed when every look at that innocent face reminded her of the terrible truth? On the third night, when she could no longer bear the weight of the secret, Carmen decided to seek final confirmation. She rode to the village of Tres Cruces, where José Hernandez, her most trusted informant, kept a cantina frequented by outlaws and black market traders. "Carmen Delgado," José murmured, cleaning a glass while observing the detective enter. Few customers occupied the tables at that late hour, and most looked away when they recognized her. "¿Qué te trae por aquí a esta hora?" "I need information, José, about Esteban Morales." Carmen sat at the bar, keeping her voice low. "About his family." The bronzed face of the informant hardened. "That is dangerous information, friend. Why do you want to know about the Viper's family? Just answer. Did he have a son?" José hesitated, then nodded slowly. "He had one. A boy, Diego. Died in the train accident a month ago, along with his mother. That's what made Morales go completely insane. Before he had limits. Never killed children, never attacked families with minors. But after he lost his son," José shook his head. "Now he has no mercy for anyone." "And if I told you the boy survived?" Carmen asked, her voice barely a whisper. José's eyes widened. "Are you crazy?" Morales offered 1,000 pesos reward for any information about survivors from that train. He turned over every city, every ranch, looking for his son. If the boy were alive— "He is," Carmen interrupted, "with me. I saved him from the flames." The silence that followed was deafening. José dropped the glass, and the sound of glass shattering on the floor echoed through the cantina like an omen. "Santa Maria," he murmured. "Carmen, you don't understand. Morales isn't just looking for revenge anymore. He's looking for his son. And when he finds out where he is, he'll come after me," Carmen completed, feeling the weight of destiny closing over her like a shroud. Not just that, he'll destroy anything that stands between him and Diego, entire cities if necessary. Jose leaned over the bar. You have to give up the boy, Carmen. It's the only way to avoid a bloodbath. Carmen felt nausea rising in her throat. Give an innocent child to a killer? Never. Easy assassin is his father, and a desperate man to recover the only good thing he has left in the world. The ride home was the longest of Carmen's life. With each step of the horse, her heart broke a little more. When she arrived at the house, she found Diego sleeping peacefully, a small smile on his lips. He was probably dreaming of his adventures by the stream, of golden fish and the stories she told about brave heroes. Carmen sat on the edge of the bed, observing the child's serene face. How could she explain that the father he loved and mourned was the same man she had sworn to capture? How could she say that each day of happiness they had shared was built on a terrible lie? Papa used to sing to me before sleep, Diego murmured without opening his eyes, as if sensing her presence. Do you think he's in heaven with Mama? Carmen swallowed the knot in her throat. I hope so, little one. Sometimes I feel like he's close, as if he were taking care of me from somewhere. Diego opened his eyes, and Carmen saw in them a purity that made her question everything she believed about justice and morality. Do you believe in miracles, little Carmen? Yes, she whispered, gently stroking the boy's dark hair. I believe in miracles. But as Diego went back to sleep, Carmen knew that the miracle she needed most, a way to protect this child without betraying everything she had fought for, might be impossible to achieve. Fate had placed in her hands not only her enemy's son, but also the key to her life's greatest tragedy. The purest love she had ever felt was about to transform into the cruelest decision she would ever have to make. The howl of the night wind through the pines was interrupted by the distant sound of hooves against stone. Carmen woke instantly, her detective instincts alerting her to danger before her mind even fully processed what she heard. 3 riders were approaching in the darkness, and by the cautious rhythm of their mounts, they weren't coming on a peaceful mission. Esteban Morales had discovered where his son was. Diego, she whispered, gently shaking the boy. Wake up, my love. We have to go. Diego's dark eyes opened confused in the dark. What's happening, little Carmen? Why are you whispering? Carmen was already dressing quickly, checking her weapons with the efficiency of someone who had done this hundreds of times in life-or-death situations, but never with a child depending on her. Never with so much to lose. Dangerous men are coming, Pequeño. I need to take you somewhere safe. Her hands trembled slightly as she loaded her revolver. For the first time in years, Carmen Delgado felt fear, not of dying, but of failing to protect the one she loved. The sound of hooves was closer now. Carmen quickly calculated. 3 men, probably armed to the teeth, knowing the terrain as well as she did, and leading them, a desperate father who believed he had lost his only son forever. Are they bandits, little Carmen? Diego asked, his small voice in the dark as he dressed quickly. Carmen hesitated. How could she say that one of the bandits was his father? How could she explain that she was fleeing from the man Diego loved most in the world? Yes, they are very dangerous bandits, but I'm going to protect you, I promise you. They left through the back door, Carmen guiding Diego by the hand through the darkness toward the stable. Her plan was simple. Get 2 horses and flee to the mountains, where she knew caves where they could hide until she decided what to do. But Esteban Morales hadn't survived so many years as the territory's most wanted bandit by being careless. When Carmen opened the stable door, a dark silhouette was already waiting for them inside. Carmen Delgado, said a deep, hoarse voice loaded with pain that transcended any anger. The famous detective who saves children from burning trains. Carmen pushed Diego behind her, her hand finding the revolver grip. In the faint moonlight, she could see the man she had been hunting for so long. Tall, thin, with scars that told stories of violence, but with eyes that shone in a way she recognized, the same shine she saw in Diego's eyes when he spoke of his father. Esteban Morales, she replied, keeping her voice steady. I've been hunting you for months, and I've come for my son, he said, taking a step forward. What a coincidence that we both find what we're looking for on the same night. Diego moved behind Carmen, and she felt the exact moment he recognized the voice. "Papa?" he whispered, incredulous. The sound broke Carmen's heart. It was the first time Diego had said that word since the accident, and it was loaded with so much love, so much relief, so much longing that she felt her own tears threatening to surface. "Yes, my son, it's Papa," Esteban replied, his voice breaking slightly. "I came for you, as I promised I always would." Carmen felt Diego move, wanting to run to his father, but she held him firmly behind her. Her duty as a detective and her maternal love were at war within her chest. "He's under my protection, Morales. I won't let you take him back to a life of crime." Esteban's laugh was bitter as gall. "Protection? You kept him away from his own father for weeks. You made him believe I was dead. I saved him from the flames. I cared for him when he had no one else in the world. And I'm grateful for that," Esteban said, his voice lowering to a dangerous tone. "But now he comes home." Carmen knew she had reached the moment she had feared since discovering the truth. The confrontation between her duty and her heart, between the justice she represented and the love she had discovered. Diego was caught between two people who loved him desperately, and that love was about to transform into the most destructive force any of them had ever faced. "I won't hand over a child to a killer," Carmen said, finally drawing her weapon. "Then," Esteban replied, doing the same, "let's settle this the way it's always been settled in the West." The silence that followed was heavy as lead, broken only by Diego's ragged breathing and the distant howling of wind in the mountains. Father and detective faced each other in the dimly lit stable, both with weapons drawn, both protecting what they considered most precious in the world. The same 8-year-old boy trembling between them. "No!" Diego shouted, trying to place himself between Carmen and Esteban. "Por favor, no se lastimen." Carmen kept him firmly behind her without taking her eyes off Esteban. "Stay behind me, pequeño. Papa and I need to talk." "Papa, ella me salvó," Diego said, his tears gleaming in the moonlight. "Carmencita took care of me when I was hurt. She loves me." Esteban closed his eyes for a moment, and when he opened them again, there was deep pain in them. "I know, my son, and I love you more than life itself. That's exactly why I can't let her keep you away from me." Carmen saw the humanity in the man she had hunted for so long, a broken father who believed he had lost everything. But she also saw the danger, the violence he represented, all the families he had destroyed in his thirst for revenge after losing his wife and believing he had lost his son. "Diego," she said softly, "I want you to understand something. Your father, he did very bad things. He hurt innocent people. I swore to protect those people." "You killed people too," Esteban retorted. "How many men died by your gun, detective? What's the difference between the two of us?" The question hit Carmen like a punch. "The difference is that I kill to protect the innocent. You kill out of greed, anger, for love," Esteban exploded. "After I lost Maria, after I thought I lost Diego, I had nothing left to lose. Every man I killed, every town I robbed was because the world took everything from me." Diego sobbed, understanding for the first time the magnitude of the tragedy connecting the two people he loved. "Is Mama dead because of me? If we hadn't been running, she—" "No," Carmen and Esteban said simultaneously, both slightly lowering their weapons at seeing the child's suffering. "Son," Esteban said, his voice breaking, "your mother died because I couldn't protect her, because my enemies found her. The fault is mine alone." Carmen felt her heart breaking. She now saw not just the bandit she hunted, but the destroyed man who had lost his wife and believed he had lost his son. But that didn't erase all the crimes, all the pain he had caused other families. "Esteban," she said, using his name for the first time, "if you really love Diego, let him have a different life, away from violence, away from crime, and away from his father." Esteban raised his weapon again. "Never." That's when the sound of more horses reached them. Esteban's other 2 men had surrounded the property. Carmen realized her options were rapidly running out. "Papa, Carmencita, por favor." Diego broke free from Carmen and ran to the center of the stable, literally placing himself between the 2 guns. Se vocês se matarem, eu vou ficar sozinho de novo. Is eso lo que quieren? The 8-year-old boy, with tears streaming down his face, looked alternately at the two adults who defined his world. Carmencita me ensinou sobre fazer o que é certo. Papá me ensinou sobre amar la família. Por que vocês não conseguem fazer as duas coisas? Carmen felt her resolve wavering. The boy was right. Where was the honor in orphaning a child, even in the name of justice? But Esteban didn't lower his weapon. Diego, come here. Let's leave together. Not until you promise that no one is going to die, the boy shouted, remaining in the middle of the two. The cold night wind entered through the stable's cracks, carrying with it the smell of rain and the weight of destiny. 3 lives balanced on the edge of an impossible decision, and the child who should have been protected had ended up becoming the only one with enough courage to face the truth. The duel wouldn't just be between bullets, it would be between 2 ways of loving the same person, and one of them would have to yield. But the price of that surrender would be higher than any of them could imagine. The tension in the stable was so dense it seemed possible to touch it. Diego remained in the center, his small arms extended as if he could physically prevent the 2 people he loved most from destroying each other. The tears running down his face gleamed in the faint moonlight, silent witnesses to innocence about to be lost forever. Diego, get out of there, Esteban ordered, his voice tense as the string of a bow ready to fire. This is not your business, my son. Yes, it is my business, the boy shouted, his voice echoing off the wooden walls. You are fighting over me, but no one asks me what I want. Carmen felt her heart shatter hearing those words. For weeks, she had made decisions for the boy, believing she knew what was best for him. But Diego was right. No one had asked what he really wanted. What do you want, little one? She asked, slightly lowering her weapon. Diego looked first at Carmen, then at Esteban, his large, dark eyes loaded with a wisdom no child should possess. I want Papa to stop hurting people, and I want little Carmen not to try to kill him. Esteban closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, there was deep resignation in them. Son, there are things you can't understand. Some wounds are so deep that, like the wound of losing your family, interrupted a new voice. Carmen spun quickly, keeping her weapon aimed, and saw an elderly woman emerge from the shadows. She recognized her immediately, Esperanza Morales, Esteban's mother, who had been presumed dead years ago. Mama? Esteban whispered, his weapon trembling in his hand. How? I faked my death to escape the violence you brought to our family, the woman said, approaching slowly. But when I learned that Diego was alive, that my grandson had survived, I couldn't continue hiding. Esperanza positioned herself beside Diego, her wrinkled hand gently touching the boy's shoulder. My grandson, I saw what hatred did to your father. I saw how the thirst for revenge transformed him into a ghost of the man he was. Do you want him to continue like this? Diego shook his head violently. No, I want him to be my papa again, not the viper. Carmen observed the scene, understanding that she was witnessing something greater than her personal mission. This family was trying to heal from wounds that had been bleeding for years, and she was as much part of the solution as the problem. Esteban, she said, for the first time speaking directly to him as a human being, not as prey. Diego is right. You can choose to be the father he remembers or continue being the ghost that pain created. Esteban looked at his son, then at his mother, finally at Carmen. And if I surrender my weapon, if I give myself up, what guarantees that they won't hang me in the public square? I guarantee, Carmen said, surprising herself. I'll testify that you surrendered voluntarily, that you cooperated. It could mean prison instead of the gallows. Papa! Diego ran to Esteban, hugging his legs. Please, I don't want to lose you again. Esteban looked down at the son he had believed dead, and Carmen saw the exact moment when the viper died and the father was reborn. Slowly he lowered his weapon and let it fall to the dusty ground. I surrender, he said, kneeling to embrace Diego. For you, my son, for our future. Carmen lowered her weapon but didn't release it completely. She knew Esteban would still have to pay for his crimes, that justice would follow its course. But perhaps, just perhaps, there was a chance for redemption. 3 months later, Carmen visited the prison where Esteban served his sentence. Diego accompanied her, running to hug his father through the bars. The sentence had been 10 years, enough time for Diego to grow up, but not so much that they would completely lose their years together. "How is he?" Esteban asked, watching his son play in the prison yard. "He's well. He still calls me Little Carmen," she replied, a sad smile on her lips. "But every night he asks when he can take you home. And I ask myself if I deserve his forgiveness." Carmen looked at the man who had once been her most wanted enemy, now broken and slowly rebuilding himself. "He's already forgiven you, Esteban. The question is whether you can forgive yourself." When they left the prison that day, Diego held Carmen's hand tightly. "Little Carmen, do you think Papa is going to be different when he gets out?" Carmen looked at the boy she had saved from the flames, and who, unknowingly, had saved her soul from the darkness of revenge. "I believe people can change, little one, especially when they have a very good reason to." Diego smiled, and in that smile Carmen saw hope. Not just for the three of them, but for the possibility that even in the deepest tragedies, love could find a path to redemption. The Wild West had claimed its price, as it always did. But this time, instead of leaving only scars, it had also left the promise of healing. And so our story ends, with sacrifice, redemption, and proof that even in the darkest moments, love can transform destinies. If this journey moved you as much as it moved me telling it, leave your like and share in the comments which moment touched your heart the most. And if you want more Old West stories that prove courage comes in the most unexpected sizes, don't forget to hit the bell, because in the next episode, we'll meet a young sheriff who will discover that his greatest enemy might be closer than he imagines.